In this video, we're going to talk about building wealth quickly, but we're also going to talk about one of the trickiest schemes that you need to know about before you get started down this path. And I guarantee that this particular scheme, it's nothing you've ever been warned about, but it's something that you are very familiar with. And you probably know a lot of people who are unknowingly caught up in it. So if you are here with me on the live Zoom call strategy session, and you want to know the answer to that riddle, just go ahead and type no schemes, just dreams in the chat. Are you ready to go? Okay, let's go. So, you have all heard of the get rich quick scheme, right? So, if you're on Zoom with me, just wave at me. Have you ever heard of the concept get rich quick scheme? Right? Of course you have. So when I say the word scheme, what is the first word that comes to mind? You can put it in the chat for me. The first word that comes to mind when I think of the word scheme is scam. And when someone talks about getting rich quickly, they talk about getting rich, building wealth, doing it as fast as possible. Our minds immediately go to, like, our immediate response is like, oh, that's a scam, right? And there are so many scammers out there. There are people who will promise you the world and then they will take your money and they provide you with nothing legitimate and you get nothing in return. And you've got to watch out for these people. You've got to use wisdom, especially in these days. But indulge me, if you will, on this small little thought experiment. So we know that it is possible for people to get rich, right? Maybe you don't personally know any billionaires, but I bet you know at least someone who started off kind of broke and then eventually they built up some sort of wealth, right? So, how do you think that they did it? How does a person go from not having much to building up some sort of wealth? Well, they do it the same way that anybody does anything. You set a goal and then you follow a plan in order to achieve that goal, right? You set a goal and then you work toward it. So we know that it is possible for us to reach our goals, even the big ones. We can do it quickly, right? Maybe if we apply some leverage, we stay focused, maybe we get some mentorship from experienced people. So if we know that we can get rich and we know that it is possible to set a goal and reach it quickly, then why then do we automatically dismiss the idea of building wealth quickly or get rich quick? Why do we automatically dismiss this as a scam, right? We know that getting rich is possible, setting goals is possible, but meeting the goal of doing things quickly when it comes to wealth, we dismiss this as a scam. And so I think the reason this stigma exists, when I just sit around and think about it, is because somewhere along the way, we bought into the idea that building wealth, which we casually call getting rich, right? We've bought into the idea that building wealth is really difficult. It's this uphill battle. And so when someone comes along and they tell you this idea that sounds like a myth, they say, you know, you could actually do this for yourself and you could do this pretty quickly if you wanted to. If you just followed this plan, there's something about that that just seems really off. It seems dishonest. It seems deceptive, like internal alarm bells inside just start going off for you. And that's absolutely fair. That's absolutely fair because wealth scams do exist and they are devastating. Like, it makes me think of little old ladies who get connected with someone on the internet and they just start sending them money because they think they're sending it to some poor, disparaged person, right? Now, however horrible and devastating these get rich scams are, there's actually another scheme that is much more common, arguably, potentially more devastating for people. And the majority of people actually spend their entire lives caught up in this scheme without any alarm bells going off, In fact, most people don't even recognize it or question it. So let's go back to that word scheme. I have always associated the word scheme with the word scam until I actually looked up the definition and realized that scheme and scam are not exactly synonymous. So the definition of a scheme, it is a carefully arranged plan or design or program for accomplishing a particular purpose. And then it says sometimes, like a really big sometimes in italics, sometimes a scheme is also a secret or dishonest plan that is intended to deceive or gain an unfair advantage. So when I read this definition, I realize that schemes are just mostly plans that people follow to reach their goals. Schemes are scams when they are intentionally designed to deceive, to take your money and never provide what it is that they promised you. But what about when schemes are legitimate plans, legitimate programs that are designed for you to accomplish your goals as quickly as possible? So, again, we have determined that you've all heard of the get rich quick scheme, but let's talk about that riddle from earlier. The scheme that you have probably never heard of is the stay financially limited for your entire life scheme. How many of you have heard of this? Have you heard of this? Just wave at me. Have you heard of it? No? Nobody waving at me? Okay. Shaking heads. All right. I didn't think so. So you've never heard of it, but you know exactly what it looks like. All right, I'm going to be a little bit cliche right now, so forgive me. But this looks like you go to school, you graduate, you get a good job, then you take on debt to finance your American dream, and then you trade your time for a fixed amount of income so that you can eventually pay off the American dream that you financed, right? This is the scheme and this is the plan. This is the program that the majority of us, myself included, were handed. We were handed this plan from the time that we were kids. Now, personally, I just have to come clear that I'm a little skeptical and I'm a little cynical about this plan and about this model. All right. So, to be fair, we said that a scheme is just a plan that you follow designed for a specific purpose. So, I'm not going to say that following this path is a scam, but it is obvious that this type of scheme, this type of design was not designed for anyone who follows it to build wealth and momentum and freedom quickly, right? So, if you were to ask most people this question, if you could, would you like to build wealth and achieve financial freedom as quickly as possible? I feel like the majority of people would say yes to that question. But then if you look at the plan or the scheme that these people are following, it's not in alignment with that desire. It would be the one that I just described, the one that keeps people financially limited for a long duration of time. So, why then? Why then, if you ask most people what they truly want, okay, getting rich quickly, building wealth quickly, right? Why then are they following a plan that keeps them limited at length if their true desire would be, sure, I would love to build wealth quickly? So I said this earlier. I think it's because so many people in our society truly believe that building wealth is hard. Therefore, doing it quickly is just pretty much impossible. So I used to believe this too. And that was until someone opened my eyes to this concept that wealth building is actually about more than just accumulating money. It's also very much tied to having more time. Financial freedom really is nothing without time freedom. Now, Myron Golden once asked an audience full of people, he asked them, hey, if I offered you $1 million and I gave it all to you cash right now today, would you take it? And of course, everyone in the audience said yes. But he said, okay, here's the other side of the deal though. I will give you $1 million cash in your hand right now today, but you have to end your life tomorrow. Would you still take that deal? And everyone in the audience said, of course not, right? The point he was trying to drive home with this exercise is whether we recognize it or not, time is actually exponentially more valuable than money. So, how many of you, after hearing that analogy, would agree that time is much more valuable than money, right? So, the next question that I would have for you is then, why do we then so willingly, so often, without even questioning it or looking for another way, why do we then follow the plan or follow the scheme that has us trading so much of our time for so little money in return? One of my mentors actually phrased it to me that exact same way. Why are you trading so much of your time for so little money in return? When they phrased it to me that way, number one, I felt really foolish, like really foolish that I had never asked that question or made that connection, trading time for money, and how much more valuable my time actually was to me when you put it in that perspective. But I also had this visual of people like handing out diamonds, but then getting plain old rocks back in return. Like, how many of you would be willing to make that trade? Would you exchange your diamond jewelry for just a pile of plain old rocks? Like, any hand raisers out there? Like, no, exactly. Nobody, right? So, most people define being rich or being wealthy as the accumulation of money and valuable assets. So, I'm going to ask you this question. You can either type it in the chat or put it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube later. If somebody accumulates $1 million, does that mean that they are wealthy? Just give me a yes or a no. The answer to that question is actually, it depends. All right, so let's do something on the board. You guys remember those classic math problems from school? Like train A, if train A and train B leave the station at the same time, and train B travels this certain amount of distance, and train A travels a certain amount of distance, but they're going at different speeds, like which one gets there first? So just indulge me real quick. We're just going to do a classic story problem, okay? Person A and person B, they both accumulate $1 million. So they both accumulate $1 million. But person A accumulates $1 million, and it takes them 40 years. And person B accumulates $1 million, and it only takes them 1 year. Which person would we actually consider to be rich? Which guy actually got wealthy? This one, you don't even need any calculators, pencil, or paper. This one is obvious, right? Obviously, it's person B. Because at the end of 40 years of working to accumulate that $1 million, person A, they're probably done, right? Like they're done working. They've maxed out their capacity. They've maxed out their time. They're sliding into retirement with $1 million, which is nice. But I pray for them that they live a really long, amazing retirement. So they're going to have to piecemeal that $1 million out. They're going to have to make that $1 million last. And in the day and age that we live in, $1 million doesn't go as far as it used to, which is kind of sad. But it is what it is, right? And then the other truth is, person B, it took them a year to accumulate $1 million. They're probably not going to stop after just 1 year of working. They'll spend that same 40-year timeline building and growing, reinvesting, compounding. And in a much shorter period of time, they're going to be able to reach their goals. They will be able to, if this is a goal for them, they'll be able to live debt-free. They'll be able to make the best choices for their family. If they're philanthropic, they'll be able to give generously to charities, have fantastic experiences, have more control over their time, have more peace of mind. You guys get it, right? What this means is a very underrated metric for measuring wealth is simply not just the amount that you accumulate it, it's the speed. It's the speed at which you accumulate it. You end up being wealthier if you make money faster. And that's because you have more time to accumulate and build. And you have more time left at the end of that accumulation to spend it on life rather than just spend it on work, right? I know that everything that I am saying here is so obvious. But if it is so obvious, then why are so few people doing it? If accumulating wealth as quickly as possible has the obvious power to provide you and your family with more freedom, then why are so few people making this one of their goals and then following a plan in order to achieve it? So, like I said, I think the answer to that question, and this is just my opinion, but I think it is the reason why people don't pursue building wealth, especially quickly, is because we believe it's an impossible scam. We believe it's really hard. We just believe in general that it's not possible for us. Even if we see other people do it, we just don't have that belief. But do you want to know what my husband and I actually found to be really hard? It was actually being broke all the time. And do you know what hasn't really been that hard since he and I built our business? Not being broke all of the time. So I used to teach public school. My husband, John Paul, and I, we both used to be teachers. And I'll just put my business out there for you guys. It's been a while since I was a teacher, but my last year teaching, I made $17,500 take home for the entire school year before taxes. Trying to be a grown up and living off of that was hard, right? But then my husband and I, we built a real estate investing business together. One part of the business is that we flip houses. Now, typically, when we flip a house and sell it, we make more than $17,500 in a home sale. And sometimes, like, if I were to think of only making $17,500 as the profit of a home sale, I think John Paul and I would wonder, like, what went wrong? We'd kind of be like scratching our heads, looking at the numbers. Where did we overspend? Where did we not get the budget right? And obviously, we aren't just flipping one house in a year. Flipping one house a year is not a real business. That would be laughable, right? But it used to take me an entire year to earn that amount of money. And because I had a college degree that was tied to that amount of money, I had the audacity to call that my career, right? But because we built a business, instead of just settling for whatever salary my job was willing to pay me, we were able to actually take my income and not only increase that income, but decrease the amount of time that it took us to acquire it. And it's not because I went back to school and I got another degree or a higher degree, or I finally convinced somebody in the admin building to give me a raise. It's because we built a business. And that business gives us exponentially more control over our income, but also more importantly, it gives us exponentially more control over our time, how we spend it, and the return that we get on the time spent. Now, a lot of people will ask me when I'm teaching them about business, okay, sounds great, but wasn't building that business together like really hard? And the truth is, sure, it was hard. All sorts of things in life are hard, but as the saying goes, you just got to choose your hard, right? When we were just getting started and we were getting ready to buy our first rental property, I remember my dad asked me, "Kiddo, won't being a landlord kind of be a pain in the butt?" And I was like, "Yeah, Dad, I'm sure at times being a landlord is going to be a pain in the butt. But do you know what else was a pain in the butt? Teaching school, calling it my career, and still not being able to make ends meet as a grown up in my 30s. You choose your hard, right?" Okay, so here's the truth though, and then this is something that most people won't be upfront with you about. Okay, so can you guys just handle some really real, raw honesty right now? Not all business models, not all methods of generating your income are going to allow you to increase the amount of money that you bring in but also decrease the amount of time that it takes you to make it. Some business models are just a big old pain in the butt, and the output is not worth the input, meaning you're going to spend a lot of time working on these, and you're not going to get nearly enough money in return for the time that you're spending on this business model. So this is where, sure, on the outside, it looks like you work for yourself now. You are your own boss. You're calling the shots. But really all you did was just exchange one job for another. But now this job that you have, because you're the boss, you have assumed all of the responsibility and all of the liability. It all rests on your shoulders. It turns into a job that you can never clock out from. And this is a legitimate nightmare. So the rule about building a business, if you actually want it to increase your income, but decrease the amount of time that you spend to make that income, the rule is not about working harder or working more. The rule is actually to create more value. If you want to build a business that generates more revenue faster, then you need to build a business in a higher value market. So I'm going to explain to you what that means. And I'm also going to show you the get rich quick scheme that I teach my coaching students. And I call it the zero principle. And when I lay this scheme, this plan out for my students, they begin to see that making more money in a shorter period of time is actually realistic and attainable. But it's not so much about working harder, although it does require hard work to get launched and to get momentum going. But it's not about working harder, it's actually about working higher. So I'm going to give you a demonstration that is going to make this all clear, so pay attention, okay? I'm going to demonstrate for you what I call my zero principle. And I just want to be upfront with you that what I'm about to show you is like fourth grade level math. And I've said it a few times that I think the reason why so many people believe that accumulating wealth is really hard, is really difficult, because we have been taught to overcomplicate it. So I'm going to map out a handful of scenarios on my whiteboard for you. The reason why I call it the zero principle is because in these scenarios, all I'm literally doing is just swapping around zeros. Before I do that, I'm going to close the door to my office because my husband just texted me. He is coming home. My dog's going to bark. Give me one moment. Okay, the zero principle. Can we see it? We can see it. Is it backwards? It might be backwards. Let me on mirror here.
It wasn't backwards. It was good.
Cool. Cool, cool. Is it backwards now? Or are we good?
You're good.
Oh yeah, thank you, Sheila. Got people on a Zoom call helping me out. Got my back. You guys are great. So all I'm going to do is just swap around zeros. I'm going to use the same numbers, the same amount of numbers. We're just going to move them around in different combinations. And like I said, this zero principle uses fourth grade level math. My youngest son, Ben, is going into the fourth grade next year. I homeschool him, so I am going to be teaching him this principle next year. So pay attention, because my hope in teaching this to you is to see that it's actually pretty simple. So if the goal is to build a seven-figure business, that wasn't necessarily my husband and I's original goal, but eventually when we realized that it wasn't going to be that complicated, it turned into our goal. So if your goal is to build a seven-figure business, and that just means that you bring in $1 million plus in annual revenue. So a seven-figure biz is $1 million per year that your business building endeavors brings in. Now, revenue is not money that you put into your pocket. So I don't want you to think that every year I'm just stashing a bunch of cash in my pocket. That'd be nice, maybe someday, right? So it doesn't mean the amount of money that goes into their pocket. This is the revenue that your business brings in. So in this teaching, we're going to be going up levels on a ladder. It's called the value ladder. And then at each level and in each market, as you ascend to higher level, higher value markets, you are creating more value. If you're not creating more value, then the market will spit you out and you will fall back down the rungs of the ladder. So when you enter into these higher level markets, you're actually forced to utilize like all of your skills and all of your potential and all of your brain power and all of your creativity. It's really, really fun and interesting and intriguing. And for those of you who make it your goal to go up this ladder, you're going to get like hooked. You're going to get addicted because it's cool. It's really fulfilling. All right, I'll get into it. So the more value you create, the more compensation you can receive for less time spent on the endeavor. Okay, so let's go back in time to when I tried to start a business as an after-school tutor. Okay, so when I was an after-school tutor, I was charging $20 an hour. Maybe they are charging more these days. I hope so. But as an after-school tutor, I was charging $20 an hour. I was positioned at probably the lowest rung on the value ladder, trying to create a business way down at the bottom. So if my goal, and it wasn't then, but let's say you've made a goal to make $1 million in a year, and you say to yourself, I'm going to charge people for my services at a rate of $20 an hour, it would take you 50,000 hours in that year to make $1 million. Now, the problem with that is there's only 8,760 hours in a year. So therefore, it is impossible to generate $1 million when you are at this level, right? So I can have all of my math checkers with their calculators go ahead and check me in the comments. But I'm pretty sure that 24 times 365 is 8,760. So you don't even have enough hours in the year if you worked around the clock. So if this is the level at which you decided to build your business, that would be fine, but you're never actually going to build real wealth here. And probably no one would even really call this a business. This is more like a side hustle. And there's nothing wrong with side hustles, okay? But now we're just going to swap the zeros around. So we had $20 an hour would take like, what did I say, like 50,000 hours? Something like that, right? So now we're going to do the other business that I tried to build. And I say that with some really generous air quotes. The other business that I tried to build as a fitness rep. So I was selling affiliate fitness products, or I was selling products for an affiliate marketing company online way back in the day. And each item, we would say, would roughly cost about $200 a package. Okay, so as a fitness rep, my average sale was about $200 a package. So that's per package. And if my goal then was $1 million in annual revenue, then that means I would need to make 5,000 sales a year. So maybe I'll write this 50K out here so that you can see this. Okay, same number of zeros. We're just doing, like I said, this is fourth grade math. I used to be an elementary teacher. I've taught fourth grade math. This made a lot of sense to me. You're just taking the zero from the back of there and you're sticking it there, and that's where it goes, right? We're just swapping out zeros. So as a fitness rep, if the average item I sold was $200 and I had a goal of $1 million in annual revenue, I would need to make 5,000 sales a year. And 5,000 sales a year, if you round it up or round it down, is about 417 sales a month. So if you take that down to the day, that's about 14 sales a day. So that means you would have to hustle around the clock in lower end affiliate marketing if your goal was to bring in $1 million, if your goal was to really actually start to build wealth. This is that nightmare scenario that I was telling you about earlier, the one where you think you've built a business, generous air quotes, but really it's just a job that you can never clock out from. It is a nightmare. Ask me how I know, because I was there, right? So if this is where you are building, of course you are going to believe that getting rich, especially quickly, is either hard or impossible, because in these two rungs of the ladder, it is pretty much impossible, right? But let's go ahead and swap around zeros and then go up that value ladder again. So now let's just pretend that someone sells insurance packages. I never have, but let's just say somebody sells insurance packages. You can tell me in the comments about how much would you sell an insurance package for. Let's just say they're about $2,000, just to stick with the original numbers, keep congruency, right? We're just going to work with twos and fives and zeros. So if someone sells insurance, let's swap that zero, bring it over here again, for $2,000, $2K per package, and they have a goal of bringing in $1 million a year, well, then they need to make 500 sales per year. So now we're getting a little warmer, because this turns into only 10 sales a week. For 50 weeks of the year, this means you get to take 2 weeks of vacation, right? This isn't terrible. We're getting a little warmer, we're getting closer, but the truth is you're still probably on the phone like 50 hours plus a week. You're still hustling like crazy. So if you are building a business on this rung of the value ladder, you will probably live a very comfortable day-to-day life, and you will be able to provide for yourself a moderate retirement, but you're not going to be building the real wealth, right? So let's just go ahead and go even higher on the value ladder. Let's say someone now, they're selling cars for $20,000 a vehicle. And I know that cars are getting more expensive, especially in today's market. But again, for congruency's sake, we're just going to keep that at a 2 with zeros behind it, because we're just swapping around zeros, right? This is just an exercise. So if your goal then is $1 million in annual revenue, then you need to sell 50 cars in a year. 1 car a week for 50 weeks. Again, 2 weeks a year vacation, right? This is much better. Here you have finally opened up some financial breathing room, and also some significant breathing room in terms of time, because you're bringing in $1 million a year. And again, this is in revenue. This isn't like what goes into your pockets, right? But doing it this way, selling 50 cars in a year, if you only have to sell 50 cars in a year, 1 car in a week, then that means you have opened up some healthy space for leisure activities, time spent with families. You guys can go on vacations. And then you're probably not even using all of that leisure activity time up on those things. So maybe you'll even use some more of that time, more of that freedom to sell even more than just 1 vehicle a week. So this gives you an opportunity to earn even more than $1 million in revenue, and you're not killing yourself in the process. Okay. So before we keep going, there's 2 things that I want to consider. So in this exercise, all we're doing is swapping around zeros. This is simple math, just like I said. Business building concepts do not have to be overly complicated. We just have this tendency to do so, probably because That's what we were taught the majority of our life, right? And every time I go up this value ladder, this is the second thing to take into consideration. Every time I go up the value ladder, I'm entering a higher value market. I'm creating more value in the space, which means I'm getting compensated more. I'm receiving more money in return for the time that I'm spending providing my services, right? Or providing my products, whatever it is. So as we climb this value ladder, you should be able to see, yes, these are higher value markets, which might seem intimidating when you hear that term, but none of these markets that I have described, none of these are out of anyone's reach, right? Building a business in any one of these markets is realistic and attainable, even this last one that I mentioned. And obviously, there are just levels and levels and levels that you could go up, right? We could go up on this value ladder forever, but we're only just going to go up one more rung. This is where I'm going to end the demonstration, not because I've reached the tippy top of the ladder, but because we have entered the market where John Paul and I decided to build our business in. And like I said, there are higher markets than where we are at. Absolutely. Spoiler alert, this might be where we built our current business, but this is not where we intend to max out at or stay. We've got plans to go even higher, but that is a conversation for another day. Okay, so John Paul and I built our business in the real estate market. And again, for congruency, simplicity, we're just going to keep all the numbers the same. So we're just going to say that our average home sale price is $200,000. Which, if you are following the math and following the zeros, I spent up all my zeros on this side. So that means we're just going to have a lonely little fiver over there on that side, right? So if our goal is to make $1 million a year in revenue, then we only have to sell 5 homes a year. But the cool thing is that our average home sale price is actually more than $200,000, and we flip more than 5 houses in a year. So the recap on all of this, the purpose, the meaning behind me showing you all of this, walking you through all of this, is so that you will be able to see, to build this belief, to build this confidence up inside of you, that any plan that you choose to follow, technically any of those plans or programs are schemes. And you've got to use wisdom to determine and discern which schemes are devious, like legitimately devious, and which schemes are just plans that you can follow to reach whatever it is, the goal that you've set for yourself, right? So what you just have to kind of assess, I do a lot of self-reflection. I force my husband to do a lot of self-reflection with me. And he's so indulgent of me. Like, he humors me. We do these self-reflection exercises. So do a self-reflection exercise with me, whether right now or later when you've got some time and space in your brain. If you are feeling a little short on both your time and your income, then you just have to ask yourself, do I need to be following a better scheme? Just assess the plan and the program that you are following day by day, week by week, month by month, year after year. Just take an honest look, step back and look at it. That's what we did. That's literally all we did, is we looked at the plan and the program that we were following, and we realized it is lacking. It's coming up short. And if we keep following this same path and plan, we're never going to get to where it is that we want to go. So maybe you just need a better scheme, a scheme that allows you to create more value so that you can build wealth faster in a realistic way, so that you still have plenty of life and time left over for you to actually enjoy it with the ones that you love. So if you join me on the live Zoom call today, I want to say thank you to you. And if you want to join me in the future, then the link to the live session is going to be down in the description below. Joining me live is free, and the benefit is I take time before and after the teaching to dive into whatever your questions are, give you guys feedback, problem solve with you, just chit chat a little bit about business and life and stuff, right? These aren't one-on-one sessions. These are for anyone and everyone who hops on the call. So if you're watching me on YouTube, you get my amazing teaching, right? Thank you so much for showing up. But if you show up to the live Zoom call, then you get the strategy session. And that, my friends, is the game changer. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next session. Take care.